G'day everyone, I'm Michelle J. Raymond, and listeners, we're back in the series of who is actually doing the work out there and what can we learn from them, especially when it comes to corporate social media strategy. And the way I find these guests is I scroll my own feed and look for people whose content is actually speaking to this. And Chris Downey from Elastic, you were an obvious choice for me, so thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. I'm fanboying out here. I think I've told you this before, but I listen to every episode. So I'm not going to listen to my own episode, though.
Oh, come on. It's very meta. That is something that I'm going to tell you after 4 or 5 years of doing this, editing podcast episodes, you never get used to the sound of your own voice. But thankfully, people like you are out there listening. So tell me something. Elastic, funny name. What do you guys do? And what's a day or a week in the life of you at work actually look like so people can get a bit of an insider view around what you're up to?
Yeah. So Elastic is a search, security, and observability company. We're an AI business at our core, as is everyone right now. But I think AI really is at the heart of all of our products right now. And it's been really interesting to join a company last year that really has embraced AI. No 2 days are really the same so far. I've been really building a lot of our governance programs and our editorial strategies. And so as we evolve all of those, it has really changed what we're doing on a daily basis.
The world is spinning at a million miles an hour, I think, for marketers and social media managers and communications managers that are out there. And I think that there's still a lot of misconceptions when it comes back to what does a corporate social media team actually do? And what do you think that most organizations still don't understand around what a social media team actually does?
It's interesting. I would have told you about 10 years ago, what people thought we all did on a daily basis was so very wrong, mainly because they thought we were just having fun doing dance videos. And I've never once posted a dance video on a B2B channel. But here 10 years later, I would say our stakeholders probably don't have a great idea of what we do on a daily basis, but they probably understand social a little more. They probably understand what it takes to get a social post live, but they don't understand that, especially on these social media teams, where a lot of times you've got very young, early professionals who have the keys to the kingdom with the social channels. They've got a lot of responsibility, and they are publishing more content on a daily basis than most people do in an entire year. And so when I talk to people about what the team does on a daily basis, they are really managing the overarching brand and perception of the company every time they open their phone or their laptop to one of our social platforms.
It is absolutely crazy, I think, the level of responsibility. I find with the clients that I work with, we have two ends of the spectrum kind of working on the social. We have people fresh out of probably university, maybe 25 to 30 at that end of the scale. And then we have people that have probably done it their entire careers and are now in one-person marketing teams responsible for everything, whereas historically maybe they had agencies doing things, they had much bigger teams, and of course there's everywhere in between. But I think there is a lot of responsibility that goes with this, and that is possibly some of the hesitation that comes with people feel like, am I even really allowed to do this? Because I don't want to break the brand. Do you think social can ever break a brand? Is there a post that you think that's done in good faith? I'm not talking about someone being malicious, but can a post really break a brand? Because I think a lot of people hesitate around that.
Yeah, I think my initial take on that was what you said. It is not, right? Can somebody be malicious? I think that's what I have found in my social media career is you have some of the most trustworthy, responsible people in these roles. And I've never once come across somebody who has the keys to the kingdom who would ever do something that would endanger the brand or their own career. But what you were really trying to get to the heart of is, can one bad post break the brand? No. And I think many times we're far too precious with our words, or we agonize over what's going in a post. And in many cases, I'd rather do the same post 3 times and see which one works best. As you know, there's no real A/B testing in organic social. At the moment you put out the first post, it's going to impact the next post. But I think teaching people that you're going to put out content that falls flat, some of it's going to go huge. on the whole, most of it's going to fall somewhere in the middle. And it is, me as a very much analytics driven person, I look at the averages and what are the things that are driving our averages up and how do we do more of that? But I encourage my team to push me typically because I'm usually going to be the more conservative one. And I want them to bring me the big ideas and push me to take more chances.
I think I'm going to start giving guest t-shirts or mugs with the best sayings that come out of the episode, because I think yours will be one post won't break the brand, because I think it's an important thing, because it's an important part of the business, but also it's okay to have some fun and experiment with these things, like you said. And often these experiments teach us something good or bad so that we can get growth going forward. I think that might be on your t-shirt.
Good.
The reason that I want to talk to you, I know that you've had a career where you've been building these social media programs inside some pretty large organizations. When you're starting from scratch, so we're back at the beginning, where do you begin? And more importantly, what can you share that you think most businesses are often trying to do too soon in that process?
That's a great question. I think I've built some social handles from the ground up earlier in my career, and what I thought would work probably never did work. The thing that I learned there is it does take a lot of effort, a lot of testing before you're going to grow that. In most cases, in the last few years, I've mostly come into very established brands who maybe didn't have a super established social media program, or they didn't have an established governance program. And they're all really different. And it's all based on the DNA and the history of the company. And there's always some YouTube channel that was set up with, somebody's intern's dog's Hotmail account in 2015. We've all had that, and it's all something that you kind of roll with. But I think getting a lay of the land, I think my first job when I come into a team is just to kind of assess what's working and what's not. And anything that's working, I keep it going and I double down on it. But the things that aren't working, there's probably a reason why we're doing it. And instead of just saying no and turning things off, it's more about kind of understanding why we are doing the things that we're doing and try to then build those relationships with the stakeholders to help them understand how we could support them better. I say that, and it sounds like I focus on the content day in and day out. I wish that was the case. In a big B2B publicly traded company, governance is actually where I get really excited about things even more than the content. I love a good process, and I've been through some SOX compliance audits in the past with social media. And at the point where you have something go wrong, you understand the value of having good process behind things and the reason why. And I always lean back into this every time I'm trying to sell in a governance program, is the more that we know that our processes work and will protect us, means that we can push the limits harder and further on everything that we're doing and know that we're safe in doing it.
I love it. What does good governance look like to you practically?
It really depends on the company. I would say at its very base, I want to know who's got access to our channels and why. And also, I want to make sure that at the drop of a hat, if something happens with the company, something happens in the world, let's say maybe a pandemic happens, that you have the ability to shut things down quickly, especially in companies that I've worked for that had hundreds of social media channels. Those are the ones where you can't reach everyone. They may have things scheduled to go live while they're sleeping. How do you make sure and turn that off? But also making sure that as people leave the company or join the company, that you know that they're getting access to the right handles or that's being taken away. And that kind of gives you a little bit of security to know, the worst thing that can ever happen, the worst question you could ever ask me, who approved that post? It's the worst. Absolute worst.
Oh, I love that, because it seems like it's something only trivial, but I remember doing an audit of a company page for a client, and I checked the page admins, like who's got access to the LinkedIn company page. And they had about 25 people listed in there, 5 of which had left the company, some of which had left not under good terms, and that was only recent. And they still had access to things like the LinkedIn ads account. So they could have been running whatever because they had full approval rights, super admin rights. And I was like, hello, we need to
Yeah.
come and fix this up. So, it might seem silly, but it is the thing that I look at first on my list when I go in, just to see who does have access, what level of access do they still have, and do they still need it? And yeah, it's frightening just the number of times that they go, oh, that person left. Sorry, whoops. It's just not top of mind for people. It's just
Yeah.
get on with the work, get on with posting. And I guess I'm trying to have more conversations like this to say to people, success in the posting often comes from the things that we're doing beforehand and around the program. And documenting processes is a current theme that's coming up in conversations like this. Knowing what to do if something goes wrong is something that I definitely love that you've got that all in place and not surprised. But Chris, like the next question, I'm going to press your buttons. I'm just going out there right now because there's this kind of perception that when someone's launching an employee advocacy program, that basically what happens is all you need to do is get out there and pick a platform. So there's plenty of employee advocacy platforms to go with. And you're just going to load it up with content, get those willing volunteers. And yeah, it's all about the tool because they're just going to press publish. And I know that is not what employee advocacy is to you. And it's not about the tool. I'm going to give you a few minutes to say, why isn't it just about the tool?
As you know, because you've been reading my content, we've recently launched a new employee advocacy program. And I'm getting a lot of people reaching out to us saying, I know that you've launched a new tool. And absolutely, we do have a new tool, but every conversation starts with, I know you've brought me to this meeting because you want to learn about the new tool. The tool is only 5% of the employee advocacy program that we're launching. The other 95% is going to teach you how to use LinkedIn better, starting with making sure that your profile is optimized and that you have an engagement strategy that teaches all of the employees in the program how to connect with people in a meaningful way so that there's a reason for them to listen to you and that you're giving before you take, you're reaching out and you're commenting on their content and giving them a reason to engage with you. And then and only then should you start posting your own content. And quite frankly, and I know I'm paying money for this tool, I don't care if you ever use it. If you need it, I want you to have it there. And we're going to fill it with the best content that we've got so that you know that you can go in and have the most relevant content right there at your fingertips. But if you're the person who wants to write their own content, you feel comfortable with that, good on you. I want more of you in the program. And in fact, I'll probably start pushing your content into my program for the rest of the sales team to share. So it's hard when people just want to have a tool and they do just want a publish button. The very first question that I got when we launched our program was, how do I automate this? And that drives a lot of discussions with anybody who's been following your podcast. If you know what's going on with LinkedIn's Gen AI backend, that won't work. It's not going to, and in fact, you're going to do your own brand harm and you're going to do your company's brand harm if you just hit publish. Because if you have thousands of people just hitting publish and spamming the system, they're going to say these people do not have relevant content. The best part about that, which is different than 10 years ago when I launched probably my first employee advocacy program, they just had to trust the social media guy. How do you know that's true? A LinkedIn rep kind of told me maybe that was how it worked, but we didn't know for sure. And now after the engineering blog launched earlier this year, we know exactly how it works. We know the math behind how it works. And so we can say with 100% confidence, if you spam the system, you will not be rewarded. It won't do what you want it to do.
Yeah. And I think the beast that is all things LinkedIn right now, the game that we're playing is not the same game that we were playing even 12 months ago. It is completely different. And I went through a stage, Chris, where I wanted to throw it all away. So if we go to the end of last year, beginning of this year, I had a dummy spit. I threw my toys out of the cot, so to speak, and I was over it. I was like, this thing doesn't work anymore. The things I've been doing for 10 years, I could pull this lever, this would happen. And it was all sunshine and fairies for me because I'd figured it out. And then it just crashed and burned and I couldn't figure it out. It has taken me, we're in August now as we record this, I think the best part of all of this year and of last year, so nearly 12 months, I think if I add it up, to try and adjust what I'm doing to what this new LinkedIn world, how it works, what it likes, what it doesn't like, I am now falling back in love with LinkedIn. It's been a while. Share this honestly with people, because when you're trying to get your teams active, or maybe they have been active for a long time, and then all of a sudden it feels like it's not working, it's an emotional response that we have because we've always been taught judge performance on impressions or numbers of engagements, likes and comments and all that kind of stuff. And now that's harder than ever. It's dropped by about half in my case over the last year. And so as someone that had always consistently achieved certain numbers and now they're half that, it messed with my head. And that's the human side of what we're doing. I don't think it's ever about pressing a button or automating it. I get a bit scared when people want to just automate things because I'm like, you're not invested in it. And the thing that I've come to discover about this new world of LinkedIn is it's about having that subject matter expertise, but also how are you driving conversations, genuine conversations on that topic. And that's a LinkedIn I can fall in love with again. I've had to learn that it's showing me to new people and not necessarily just the friends of LinkedIn that I made in 2020 and 2021 while I was growing this business. But it's definitely shifted. And yeah, just posting doesn't get you anywhere. It really doesn't. It's such an interesting kind of thing because a lot of people say employee advocacy, just get your team posting. It's just not that, right? It's just
I'd rather roll it out super slow, but have each one of those people really get it and start seeing some results in return and tell their buddy. And then he'll tell their buddy and on and on and on, and it grows organically. But it really does drive performance to a much greater level than if you mass on board large groups. And it's something that I push back on very hard because I've failed doing that. I've had the licensing program that gave a license to everyone in the company, and it was mandated by a lot of managers, and they went in. They were not mandated to drive performance. They were mandated to post X times per week, and they just did that. And never again will I do that. I run an opt-in program. You have to want to be in the program. I won't force you. Even if your boss says you need to be in there, I'm still not going to force you. But I think a lot of this comes back to how good the content is, right? Which I think is also one of those forcing functions that you're talking about. Like whatever we think about the changes to the algorithm in the back end of LinkedIn, it's reinforcing that people are looking for good original content right now. And I think one of the things at the start of all of this a year or two ago, I started thinking about, like, as I'm seeing all of the AI tips and tricks, and we were all fed like all day long, all of these posts that said, if you're not doing this, then you're a terrible person and you're going to fail on LinkedIn. And I just started thinking, I'm like, this really feels like Google and SEO from the early 2000s, where there's so many tips and tricks and gimmicks that we all did to try and game the SEO system. And at the end of the day, if you were doing a gimmick or a trick, you failed. They would blacklist you. It was really, if you had great content that talked to the right person, it performed. And I think everyone who has any complaints about where the algorithm is today, they need to take a look at their content. And is your content as good as it could be? Is it really speaking to the audience that you're trying to speak to in a way that you're wanting to influence them and what they're looking to get from you?
Yeah, and shout out to everyone that went and created 10,000 pages on your website because you could with the click of a button, and now it's crashing and burning, and there goes your whole website. So shout out to everyone that thinks that there's a shortcut in any of this. I have been at this for around 11 years now, and if there was a shortcut, I would have found it. I am lazy by nature. I want to do it in the quickest, fastest way possible. There is no shortcut to this. Why? Because it's trust that you can't shortcut. Relationship building, can't shortcut. Like these community building type activities that we need to do to support the content. And I see it all the time when people come to me, they want me to write content for them as part of like our Thought Leadership Pro package that we offer. And I'll say, okay, I can help you with that, right? So I can take your thoughts and turn it into good content and help you with that because, you know, these are busy people and I acknowledge it. but I won't comment. I won't send you direct messages. I won't respond to anything. And I expect you to do that. And if you are saying you will not do it, I won't be a part of it because I know it doesn't work. And I'm not just going to take people's money just for the sake of it. Many people will. And there are people out there that are taking a lot of money from people pretending that this stuff works. But I guess that's why people get drawn to things like engagement pods, which I'm not going to get sidetracked on this conversation about.
I already know your view.
You know my view, so I'm not going to go there. But there's another thing that I have a pretty strong view on, and that is all things company pages. Now, it would be remiss of me not to ask you, once we've got these foundations in place, so you've got the employee advocacy side of things, you've also got the company page. How do you decide in your business what content should come from where? Because I know that there's plenty of people out there that will say company pages are dead. It's all about the employees. If only it was kind of that simple. I can't cut off half of LinkedIn. You know, I'm all about the power of two. How do you manage that and decide? Is that part of the governance that you've already set up? Is it part of the strategy? Like, where does that happen practically in the business?
My first thing that I go to is always, it's not an either or. Why not both? The way that a brand is going to say something, and a brand is not a person. So it's the people behind the channel and how they're saying it versus how the individual may say it. And you could pick 3 different people and give them the same information. They'll create a post that's 3 different ways. I think we have not fully tapped the volume of posting, which is a weird way to put it, but the volume of content that could be coming out from our employees and our brand. I don't know that we'll ever hit that, but I think there is a limited volume of real estate on a brand handle. And I think we're pretty close to that and looking at how we can optimize that. But there's also a lot of things that don't really feel right coming from a company page. So that's where we start leveraging our senior leaders and our thought leaders and even our sellers in and helping them to understand how they can put their own personal POV and their experience into the mix and how they can service their audience.
Look, this is the funny thing, because I get people come to me and they're like, Michelle, company pages are a waste of time. Why do you bother? And it's all about the people. And I'm like, at no point in any conversation I've ever had have I said to anyone that it is all about the company page and ignore the people. So I'm saying it one more time because this is my podcast and I can. But ultimately, I think for me, it's around finding the right mix out of those things. There are times when you probably know that it would be better coming from those execs or maybe people in the team. But the reality is they're busy, they're unavailable, you can't get them on board. There's some kind of friction point there. They've got other priorities. And so the page becomes the best opportunity at that point in time. And that will change on a minute by minute basis, I would imagine, in, big corporates. And so some of these things, the more time you've got on your side, I think the more you can plan things. If things are coming to you at last minute, I don't think you have as many options on the table. So for those people that are listening to the podcast that work outside of these, teams, the more time you give the social teams and the employee advocacy teams, and the more time that they can actually come up with a strategy that works best for what you're trying to achieve. And I always use LinkedIn company pages, the conversation around events, like where is the best place to post around when you're going to a trade show. That's probably where this shows up as a friction point in most of the conversations I have with businesses, because everybody wants to promote the event. You might have 1 million followers on your page. They think that because the employees only have a few thousand potentially, that the bigger opportunities on the page. That's not the case in most examples. So what is the value of an impression? What is the value of an engagement? I remember during the pandemic, we had been running our employee advocacy program for quite some time. And I kind of give the rough guidance that it's going to take about a year of having people learn how to do it and build up steam before you start seeing results. But at the beginning of the pandemic, when all of the cruise ships were stuck out in the water with people stuck on them and their stock prices were tanking, we had the CIO from one of the cruise ship lines DM one of our executives because of our employee advocacy. What is the value of that engagement? Was that worth the entire program? I would say so. Yeah, and it's connecting those dots, which are often not linear or completely transparent, as they call it, the dark social moments, those conversations that happen in the background that aren't directly related back to a click or a link or a post. It's everything. It's, oh, I think I saw that. I can't remember where I saw it. And for me, there's so much importance on just impressions. And I'm like, how do we get away from this? How do we get back to why we're actually doing this? And it's not to keep LinkedIn happy. You know, like I love LinkedIn. I teach people how to use LinkedIn, but nothing I'm doing is about helping LinkedIn to grow. It's about helping the businesses use LinkedIn to grow. And that's a very different conversation, which is why I get so worked up about sit there and babysit your posts and do this for the algorithm and do that for the algorithm. Like, no, do it for your customers and get back to that. You kind of mentioned just before that you're not expecting to see results for around a year. And so with your experience, you know that is probably realistic for when that steam gets built up, as you said. So getting the program started is one thing, but what have you found actually has these programs losing momentum, and what have you actually found keeps it going long enough to get those results?
Yeah, I think the thing that starts off the program is the same thing that kills it a lot of times. It's the platform, right? It's how you're using the platform or the platform itself and the user experience that's in there. So I think making sure that you stay close to the employees who are using the platform and making sure that you are understanding where there are hiccups. Because most people, it's the same as LinkedIn, right? You may get 1,000 impressions, but one person comments. So that doesn't mean the other 999 people weren't valuable. So if you have thousands of people in your platform, you need to stay close to them and understand like what's working for them and what's not. And it may not be the tool either. It may be that they're not comfortable. They don't know what to share. They don't think their writing is good enough. They don't want their boss to be angry that they're posting. Like any number of things could be the reason why the platform starts to diminish. But I think it goes, you were talking about, I don't expect to see big business results and sales coming from this in the first year, if I could ever attribute it in the first place. But I'm bifurcating my analytics right now. And half of it is how the platform is performing. The other half of it is who I'm actually enabling. So the teams that I go and meet with and get them onto the platform, the executives that I talk to coach them on how to use LinkedIn, the subject matter experts that I help to build their social presence, maybe get them on my YouTube channel. All of those are going into my analytics, which is how many people have I enabled? How many people am I actually getting on a call with and talking to on a monthly basis? So it is doing the grassroots effort because, as I said, if I've done it before, if you onboard the entire company, you will fail. It has to be like getting those people who see success and they tell their friend, they tell another friend, and over time, people sort of just get it, right? Because you and I know you're much more successful on LinkedIn than I am, but I've still been going for, decades at this point. And I don't know how it works. I don't know what's going to work best for me. And one post to the other is like 100 impressions to 100,000. I have no idea what the difference is.
And some days, neither do I, just for the record, listeners. Like some days I am scratching my head just going, on one hand, LinkedIn says it's all about being professional and answering queries, and this is what gets cited by AI. And then the next minute you post about your personal drama or beef with a brand and it takes off. And I do not want to see any more posts on anybody's logo commentary. I don't care if Instagram changed their logo this week. Like, not my problem. No. It's kind of funny how it takes over the feed. But to wrap this up, imagine that the LinkedIn fairies were listening to this podcast, because I do know that there is quite a few people from LinkedIn that do listen in. If you were to ask them for one feature and it can't be more impressions or reach, what would you ask for?
I can't take credit for this one. And I was so mad when I saw this last week on LinkedIn that I was like, I wish that was my idea. Somebody said, it was right when the AI slot button came out and everybody was talking about it and thanking LinkedIn. And the first comment that I saw that somebody said, we didn't actually want an AI slot button for posts. We wanted it for comments. And I was like, please extend the AI slot button to comments.
I'm lucky because I do a lot of cleanup in my comments. So I get rid of anyone that uses AI to comment or automations. I've gotten rid of all of them, and I avoid some of the big influencers that don't do that, because otherwise I'm like the moth to the flame. Like, they all come running my way. LinkedIn fairies, AI slot button for comments, please and thank you is what we'll say. So Chris Downey, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I do hope you listen back to this, because I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I am going to make sure that people have your details in the show notes so that they connect with you. Listeners, reach out to Chris. Let him know, what did you take from this episode, so that he knows that there were actual real people out there listening, just like he does normally. So thank you so much for coming. So until next week, listeners, cheers.